Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first session of our Leading Together series. In these 30-minute virtual learning webinars, WestEd experts are sharing research and evidence-based practices that help bridge opportunity gaps, support positive outcomes for children and adults, and help build thriving communities. Today's topic, creating family-friendly schools. Maria Paredes, Senior Engagement Manager at WestEd, is our featured speaker today. Thank you all very much for joining us. My name is Danny Torres. I'm Associate Director of Events and Digital Media for WestEd. I'll be your host. Now, before we move into the contents of today's webinar, I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce WestEd. WestEd is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that aims to improve the lives of children and adults at all ages of learning and development. We do this by addressing challenges in education and human development, reducing opportunity gaps, and helping build communities where all can thrive. Now I'd like to pass the mic over to our featured speaker today, Maria Paredes. Maria, take it away.
Thank you, Danny. So my name is Maria Paredes, and most of my time I spend working with schools and districts, specifically in family and community engagement. And today I want to have a short webinar discussing family-friendly schools, like what that means and how do we help our own schools become places where families belong and everybody feels welcome and comfortable and valued. In my professional life, I visit hundreds of schools. Even in my own personal life, I visit many schools with my nieces and nephews. And every time I walk into a school, I get feeling, and that's true for everyone who comes into our schools. So it's really important that we acknowledge that how we make people feel when they come into our schools is a big part of family engagement and creating a welcoming space. So let's start by I want to give you a broad definition of family-friendly schools. And that is, family-friendly schools are welcoming and inclusive, and they involve parents and caregivers in the education of their children. So this is really important, and this sets up our topics, right? It's going to be about the physical environment, but it's also going to be about interactions with families and educators and people in the school, and also the opportunities that we have, the families have to learn as they participate in your school community. So the physical environment of the school is interesting. As we drive up to a school, we look for, first of all, we look for places to park. Is there a space for parents to park their car, right? Are there signs that say parent parking, or are there open areas that allow parents, if they are pushing a stroller or walking with other smaller children, is it convenient? So that's something to think about as to how the physical environment of your school feels. Are there signs that tell parents, oh, if I walk this way, I am going to be going toward the front door of the school? And once I get to the front door of the school, do I know how to operate the button to be allowed into the front office? These seem like small matters, but they make a big difference in how nervous a parent feels, especially if they are visiting your school for the first time or even the second time. So the outdoor space of your school, the signage, it kind of sends a message to families. You have a place here, right? You have a place to park, and we have signage that makes it easier to navigate the outdoor space of your school. And then accessing the front office does it say what to do on the front door? Most of us are used to, when we visit schools, we know to go right to that red button and press it and maybe even make hand signals to the front office staff if we're able to see them so that they know to allow us in. So all of this is important. The more we all know that schools have to be very safe places, but also we can also double that with making them welcoming places. And signage and instruction is one way of doing that, really helping parents navigate all of that. Once we are inside the office, one of the things that occurs at times, all the schools look different, right? Is there a waiting area? Once we check in with the front office staff, and we are either waiting for a teacher or a counselor or a parent liaison or someone in the school that is going to take care of us as parents, is there a place to sit that is comfortable? I was recently just at a school where the space between where parents were sitting, where I was sitting with my niece waiting for the assistant principal, and the counter where the front office staff sits, it was so narrow that it felt incredibly uncomfortable to be sitting waiting. So it's important to pay attention to the waiting area, how it feels. Even if I have smaller children with me, are there books that I might be able to read with my child while I wait? Or are there other kinds of manipulatives that are sitting around so that parents have something to keep their children busy with and avoid um, distractions? So these are just small things, but it does make a big difference in how you feel when you are visiting the school or being a part of some type of activity in the school. So this is one area to pay attention to. The next area that we're gonna talk a little bit about are personal interactions. This is one of the most important things to think about when thinking about your school and how it feels, how friendly it feels and welcoming it feels to the families in your community. So how do families feel when they interact with people in the school? I have to tell you a short story. One of the schools that I worked with many years back had a change in principalship. A new principal came into the school, and we already had a group of parents in that school that were very active. They met in the Family Resource Center once a week for a couple of hours to help with projects and do many other things. These families really had the pulse of the school, and they were very, very helpful. One of the things that we asked the parents is how do you feel when you interact with the people in the school? This was a question that we posed because we were always looking for ways to make the school a more welcoming place. And this coincided with the brand new principal in the school. And almost every parent in the room talked about the fact that they had not been introduced to the principal yet, that they had passed the principal as they were walking to the resource room, but the principal had not stopped and said hi and introduced themselves and shared their name. And they felt that that was really interesting because their past principal really spent time with them, listened to them, and made them feel like a big part of the school, listened to their feedback and wanted to know what they thought about this topic and that topic, but they felt a little bit awkward that they did not have more knowledge about the principal, or the principal knowledge about them, who were a big part of the school. So this was interesting, not because the principal wasn't friendly, but because the principal was brand new. They were nervous. They were getting to know their own brand new school. And but parents notice. So I'm telling you this story because the interactions of any staff member in the school, whether it's the people in the front office, whether our counselors, teachers, administrators, bus drivers, cafeteria personnel, the nurse, anyone in the school, it should really be expected to make eye contact and say hello and make sure that every parent, every visitor, every community member that is a part of the school, that is on campus, really feels that connection. That is really important. And sometimes, as busy administrators and busy teachers and everybody walking around the school, we're all in a rush, and we sometimes forget to pay attention to the families and the community that are participating in the school. So this is really important. And for that, I would make sure that you take the time to do maybe customer service training. More and more schools are doing this just so that they have expectations and procedures, so that everybody knows what is expected, and families do feel that courtesy that comes from all employees in the school toward the families. So this is really important, that families right off the bat feels like everyone they walk by expects them to be there, welcomes them, and makes them feel like they are an important part of that school community. This is really, really important. So those are little things. Customer service training is becoming more and more important, because we do have to make our schools a place where families want to consistently be a part of and contribute to, and be connected to their teachers and everyone else in the school. So that is something that I advise, and more schools are taking advantage of customer service. The third area that I want to talk about is a big part, a very, very important part of family-friendly schools. And these are the opportunities that are offered for parents and families, caregivers, in learning and leadership. This is critical. This picture is at one of our schools. This is actually a school in California, and this was a second grade classroom. And these teachers had a learning series for the families in their classroom. And at the end of the learning series, all the families that participated received sort of a participation document saying that they participated in all those hours of learning. And that was really important. And the community that was built in this classroom, there were many other classrooms that participated, but this was a classroom in particular where almost every single child was represented by their family. And as you can see, excuse me, just as many men as women were part of this learning series. So that's a wonderful example of the type of learning opportunity for families. So what do we mean by learning opportunities for families? Traditional family engagement, of course, we offer what's expected with Title I, um, curriculum nights, parent-teacher conferences. Those are the traditional activities that most schools follow to engage families. But I really believe, and that is one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing with schools, it's really promoting the opportunities that are offered to families at the grade level. That is whether you are in elementary, whether you're in middle or high school. Families are really looking for opportunities to know exactly how to support their child's school success, academic success, and it changes from one grade level to the next. So learning opportunities are huge. And one thing is to have learning opportunities that are school-wide, but it's also really important that parents receive tailored information for the grade level their students are on, because there is all kinds of particulars about literacy and math and social emotional development and all kinds of nuanced information that it's important for parents to really understand so they can use it to support their child. The number one question that families are always asking, and this comes from my experience in family engagement, but also my experience as a teacher and when I was part of a school district for many years, the number one question that parents ask is, how can I support my child with learning? And the fact is that when parents are invited to large events, it's rare that they walk away with very specific action steps to support their own child's learning. Instead, they do build community with other families, and they do learn broad aspects of learning, literacy, math. But when it comes to their own child's needs, learning needs, it's not quite as effective as it is when they come into a learning group that it specifically addresses their own child's needs. So let me give you an examples of opportunities that you can carry out in your own schools. Sharing student progress data with families, it's probably the number one aspect that guides parents. So let's say that we are talking about formative data or classroom monitoring. If families know that students are currently learning specific content and then they were assessed, knowing the results of those assessments can really give them insight into what do I have to do as a parent if they are in need of encouragement, support, and practice of specific skills. That is huge. So many schools are actually having data sharing meetings with their families. That is a key aspect of family-friendly schools, is how well informed families feel about their own child's learning. So instead of waiting until the fall conferences or the spring conferences, having parents constantly informed is a really big aspect of family-friendly schools and keeping families in the know, and also helping them understand what exact activities or steps they can do at home to make sure their children feel more confident about that content in the classroom. So Many classrooms are having student progress data maybe 3 times a year, data conversations. So the families are invited to be a part with the other parents in that classroom, be a part of data conversations. The teachers explain what data, how the data was obtained, what the assessment looked like, whether it was monitoring, whether it was formative data, and precisely what should students be able to do in the next month or 2 months or 3 months. Those are probably the most helpful information that families can have. It's what guides their engagement. Along with data conversations is showing parents, modeling for parents activities that they can do at home, or conversations they can have, or support they can give, so that students continue to practice the areas where there are challenges. That's really important, so that the year doesn't start progressing and the child is not quite where they should be. So the more the parents know, the more that they can take that role in expanding learning into the home, right? Providing that time, that practice with their child. Literacy night is a great opportunity. Many schools have curriculum night, literacy night, whether it's math, whether it's reading. But it's very important that families understand that the progression of literacy. Sometimes we tell families, students need more vocabulary, or they need to practice this particular skill, but they have little knowledge of the progression of literacy development. And that becomes a key feature of parent learning. It is so important because they know why they are practicing or emphasizing very specific activities and skills, so that they can access the next skills, so that they can scaffold the learning, right? It's really important. So parents are number one partners in creating that practice, that knowledge, that additional practice time in the home. So I always think of learning at home as out of school time learning, right? Is if parents know how, they can certainly be that support for learning along with a teacher. That's what we really mean by home and school partnership. And opportunities for learning, whether it's in the middle school and there is career exploration, really more than showing is modeling and having the conversations and learning from the families themselves, right? That's a big part of partnership, is how this exchange of information between parents and teachers take place, and understanding that when parents and families and caregivers know exactly what they must do to support learning, that they will take on the reins and they will actually get it done. They are not going to let their child down as long as they have the tools and the strategies and the information that is being shared. So all I want to say with this is that at every step of a child's education, elementary, middle, or high school, there are very important learning content for families that allow them to be a guide of their child's education, that helps them monitor and support learning, that helps them be an active participant and contributor to their school success. So my biggest tip is make sure that every interaction, activity, or event that you have with parents becomes that learning opportunity for families. And families have a great deal to offer to other families. So creating opportunities to build community and peer support with other parents it's a big part of creating family-friendly schools. Everyone has a lot of assets to contribute, and the school is a community where everybody feels like they belong, they have value, and the outcomes from that joining process, from that collaboration, from those relationships and interactions are what truly makes schools a fantastic place to be and a welcoming place to be. This is really an example of a classroom also doing a learning activity with their families. And as you can see on one side, there are baggies already ready with activities so that the teachers can model that, the parents can practice those activities, and they will know exactly that they are practicing third grade math, for example, or that they are bringing fun and joy into the home and they can do it as a family, and that learning is strong and alive in every home. So that's really the big purpose behind learning opportunities with families. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to be with you and share some of my tips for creating family-friendly schools and welcoming environments where families feel valued and appreciated.